Hi, Jess.
Hey, Matt.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am beyond excited for what we're about to do right here. So, for everyone who's listening, this is the very first episode of Cyber on the Edge, a podcast that we're starting. Jess, why on earth did we decide to do this thing?
Some may say we're insane, but I'd say the root of this is, being a part of an early stage startup. We meet a lot of cybersecurity founders out there who are doing really cool things in the industry. It's hard for them to get a voice unless they're really paying for the time. And what we wanted to do is bring together the founders of those really innovative companies. I'm not talking acronym A, 10% better, but
Right.
somebody who's really building a company that's going to add impact and value to the industry and give them a stage to tell their story, why they started it, what they're doing differently, and see if we can help accelerate them.
Absolutely.
And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think you hit upon like the most important part, which is the innovation side of it. Like, why do people innovate? Because it's really easy to say, "Oh, I'm gonna go work in cybersecurity," but then someone's like, "Well, what part?" Right? It used to kind of be just a general, like, I'm probably gonna go and help protect a thing or respond to an incident or something like that. But now it's much more of there is a niche for nearly everyone out there. Are there just too many companies in this industry, and that's what we need to focus on, or are there too many stories not being told?
I think there's a lot of companies out there, and I don't want to say there's too many.
Hmm.
I think there are a lot of stories that aren't getting the attention that they deserve, right?
Hmm.
I think that we're at a pivotal moment in the industry where threat actors are, they're becoming very sophisticated, and the need for these niche companies that are solving really specific problems is it has never been greater. So giving them a stage to tell their story, connect with other founders, and create this network. I know that we've talked about with many founders over the
Hmm.
years is kind of why we're doing this.
Absolutely. And speaking of stories to be told, this is our first episode, so we have a duty to tell ours. And I'm going to let you go first. Why? What brought you here to this day recording this episode?
Yeah. So wow, it's been a while. So going back to the early 2000s, started my sales career selling copiers. Moved into my first what we'll call infosec role
Mhm.
at a company called Iron Mountain out in the Bay Area. Didn't know what I was doing. Infosec was early and not very sexy at the time,
Mhm.
but I loved it, and that's kind of where I fell in love with the industry. Throughout my career, I was an individual contributor at a lot of big companies.
Mm.
About 8 years ago, decided that I wanted to have more impact on strategy and more autonomy on the way a company grows.
Mhm.
So this is startup number 4 for me,
Amazing.
and building out sales, marketing, and go to market for cybersecurity companies. So that is what brought me here today.
I love it. It sounds like your interactions are probably exactly aligned with the types of folks that we want to talk to, because your growth over this career has not been maybe writing a particular product like, oh, I took this thing all the way to exit and now here I am just having fun. It's more like I'm encountering this daily and seeing this issue daily. And I think that's probably one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is that insight and what you've got, that experience there. So I'll be the first to say thanks for going on this journey with me.
Absolutely, Matt.
Number
Very
one.
excited. And Matt, tell us about your story.
I've got to say mine started in a somewhat similar fashion where I did not, I was in, I was in school, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, "Oh, I'll probably end up in business in some way, shape, or form," right? And we're talking much longer ago than I'd like to admit I can remember back. And I ended up doing some work with a digital forensic company. And it was almost as if someone picked me up and placed me in a home that this is exactly where I want to be. It just felt comfortable to be in there. And it sounds a little odd because in the digital forensic and incident response space, you're oftentimes dealing with folks who are going through some of the worst days of their company's history. And I've sat in the room next to the lawyers drafting a PR statement to the Wall Street Journal to announce a breach, and it is, the tension is palpable. I mean, it's almost humid with tension in the room. but there was never a space where I was like, I shouldn't be here, right? It started for me as solving problems, helping organizations solve problems that they couldn't get to. That career took me through lots of different phases, parts, and pieces of cybersecurity. Finally, have settled to a place now where I'm recognizing exactly what you've described. It's really tough to walk through the halls of any of the cybersecurity conferences these days and walk out of there thinking that was impactful. I just met a company or two who I think can actually help me change things. I found that a lot of times, checkbook dictates decisions as opposed to understanding where this technology may complement the environment. So for me, my story is rounded out a little bit towards I still want to help people solve problems, but it's a different problem set that I get to embark on now, solving with you. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun. But our origin stories help us kind of contextualize and understand where we're from. We'd like to share the same with the founders that we interview. But I think we're not going to limit to just founders, right? Who else are we interested in talking to?
Yeah, so I think there's another side to the journey of building a successful cybersecurity startup, right? And that's customers. And it's probably the most challenging, the most challenging thing that these founders will face. And to that, I think everybody wants to target the CISO. Well, the CISO is overwhelmed. They're dealing with a lot of different things.
They're a little busy.
They're kind of busy. They've got boards to report to. They've got a lead teams, lead strategy, and often there's a big risk in them partnering with a startup. And it's easier for them to say, hey, I've partnered with everyone on the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and that's my magic, right?
Yep.
But as things are shifting, right, I think that they're starting to recognize that some of these companies that are solving very specific problems are valuable to them, but they still face the challenge. So the other part of the story and the other part of the show, not in the same episodes, but we will be bringing on CISOs to talk to them about, what the trends in the industry are, what are the biggest challenges that they face, and how do they plan to solve them, and then digging into, why is it difficult for them to partner with a startup? I think we know the answer, but it would be great to hear their insight and kind of get their feedback on that. And it creates this feedback loop for these founders to understand, what they can do better or how they can be in a better position to work with these companies and directly with the CISO. And then also for the CISOs to understand what's going on in the industry, what's new and exciting that they're not having to go pay a ticket to an event to see. So we're really providing, I think, that for both sides of that story.
I love it. And I think that connection right there is probably one of the most important things that you and I will uncover throughout this journey is going to be what is it to really look into the abyss of the cybersecurity market, the products that are out there, the services, and just be completely lost. Not lost in the sense that you don't know where you are, what you're doing, but lost in the sense that there's just too many signals. There's too much noise. There's too many things out there. And it's very, very tough to sort through all that because every environment is unique. Every environment has unique issues. And I think we're both of the belief that there is something out there to help you solve that unique niche issue. Uncovering it's the tough part. Finding it's the tough part. There was a really interesting comment made, and at this event that we're at, there was a really interesting comment made about, you meet someone who describes their product as the most amazing thing, and here's what it does. And then you get to it, and you're like, oh, that thing was actually just a half-baked feature of yours. That has resonated with me over the past couple of hours as a really important point because it feels like that's probably where a lot of CISOs are like, not again. I don't want to be here again. So we're going to help bridge that divide a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that a little bit more, Matt, I think the point was made that companies come to these CISOs and they tell them they have a fully, production ready product. Really, they're looking for feedback. And so, having those conversations with these founders, that's not where you go first. You don't go to the enterprise for feedback, right? You've got your early customers for that. But yeah, just having those conversations, understanding where these founders may go wrong, and helping them kind of, shape their story better and have a better, compelling conversation when they get to it.
Absolutely. No. And so for those listening, we are setting out on this. And first off, we ourselves would love as much feedback as we can possibly get, as always, number one. Number two, we want to make sure that we capture and understand what it takes to get to the stages that either party is at. To become a founder and say, I'm going to go build a thing, right? That is such a weighted statement. That is such a weighted journey to go on. It's worth capturing that thing. And I think that's going to be an important part of it. I also think that there's an equal weight towards I'm going to be a CISO. I'm going to be the one that helps this organization, this company, this school, this hospital, this whatever defend themselves. And I think both are going to show us very interesting sides of a journey. And I'm looking forward to capturing it. And I'm looking forward to see where they cross as well. So for those listening, I'm excited to have you on this journey with us. Before we, kind of talk about maybe what's coming up next, I wanted to ask Jess, if someone's going to listen to this, what is one thing you want them to take away from maybe not each episode, but what is one thing that you hope we get to provide to our listeners here?
So I think that the one thing is really, what's next and new in cyber, what's different out there, because I think it's really hard for these early stage companies to get their message out there, and they go unnoticed for quite some time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for the folks listening, it's really understanding what problems people are trying to solve and kind of the trends and directions of the industry.
Yeah, that's not fair because you took my answer as part of that as well.
I didn't know.
I think the understanding the trends and the stories is one of the most important things that are out there. I've often thought that a lot of cybersecurity founders tend to try and solve a very unique niche problem that they may have solved. I was really frustrated with, my browser or something, right? A really, thing that a lot of us may have just passed over as a brief minor moment. And they were like, I think there's a better way to do this thing. Now some ideas can be really big, right? I don't like gas cars, so I'm going to build an electric one. That's a massive idea. Versus, I think email is really risky. I want to make email security a little bit better. Okay. And hopefully we'll talk to folks who help solve the latter problem there. But my point being, a lot of this starts out as a little tiny bit of frustration that is actually something that a lot of folks experience. And it's going to be great to unveil what that initial thing is to help find that common connection between all of us. Because there's a lot of times where hearing the way our product works is interesting. But hearing why that product came about, that's the part where I'm like, oh, I totally get that. I totally understand that moment of frustration. And it creates a much deeper connection for me to be like, maybe I don't buy this right now, but I know exactly what problem they're solving. I know exactly what it is they're going after. So I'm looking forward to unveiling that as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. This is going to be a great journey. I'm looking forward to it. So coming up next, we don't know exactly, because we are currently at a point, and this is the most exciting part, where we're launching our first episode here. We already have a series of guests lined up. I'm not going to unveil who to our listeners, but I'm going to tell our listeners this. We're going to be releasing every 2 weeks. We are going to have really great, impactful episodes. And I know everyone promises that, but I'll tell you, Jess and I are putting in the work to make sure that it is going to be a story that you're going to want to hear. It's not going to be just another what's going on in cyber these days. It's going to be a story. It's going to be a background. It's going to be a narrative, an origin of how someone got to where they're going. So watch out. We've got some great stuff on the horizon. If you could maybe close us out, Jess, what is maybe one of the things you're most excited about? Not for our listeners, but for you personally. What is one of the things that you're looking forward to as like, I still want to do this because of this reason?
Yeah, just learning. Even for me, I want to know what's out there, what's coming, why people are doing this. To be a founder is a risky situation.
Yeah.
And so understanding what drives them, what problem they were solving, and what motivates them, I think motivates me to continue every day. So that's what I'm most excited about.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Motivation for all, and it's going to be a great journey. Cool.
Yes.
Well, that wraps up our first episode of Cyber on the Edge. To everyone who's listening, everyone who's watching, really appreciate you here. Watch out for our next one to drop, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.